They're like with the zombie apocalypse now, with everybody walking around with their, masks on, and people don't want to make eye contact. And it's like, you can't catch it by smiling at me, like.
I find myself guilty of that too, and I tried to make a habit of being a little nicer during it. Like if somebody comes down my aisle, I'm like,
Yeah, I know exactly. I gotta get away. They're gonna catch me.
yeah, like, okay, wait a minute, they're 20 feet apart.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And we just, it is hard, it's not like they're the enemy, like, oh, this person that's down, passing me in the aisle, they're the enemy. I have to stay
Right,
away, no,
right. Or I have to be rude. You
right,
know,
exactly. It
yeah,
is, we're all in this together for sure.
right.
So Zach, thank you very much for being here today with me, with us. I'm going to ask you, would you feel comfortable introducing yourself and just kind of telling us the high points and what we can expect to hear and talk about today?
Sure. So, kind of a little bit about my background. I've been speaking for a while, probably about 10 years in the
Mhm.
professional realm, and I've really enjoyed that. Also, I wrote a book about 4 or 5 years ago based on job interviewing, and that's called The Hot Seat: How to Meet the Challenge of a New Era in Job Interviewing. So, as that book became popular, I became going around different venues, nonprofit organizations, for profit organizations, colleges, talking to people about job interviewing and career development. That seemed to be a big thing in North America, especially with competition. Nowadays, there's a job online, there's 250 applicants, and the average hiring manager looks at a resume 6 seconds. And if you think about that, 6 seconds. So even to get the job interview, it's pretty difficult. And then when you get in there, then they start putting you through multiple rounds. You meet with different groups of people. So the interviews have changed over the world and over the ways that we do things, especially with technology. So I really wanted to share a book and my experiences. I actually went through 250 job interviews with over 50 companies before I landed my very first opportunity. So my books kind of build on that failure of what not to do, and that really jump started my career and coaching, consulting, speaking, and trying to help folks master the job interview.
Excellent. I know, I mean, I am fortunate to not have had to go on a job interview now for about, gosh, I can't even remember the last time. That's just one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing. And, you don't have to sit there. But I know that, the old days the old way of interviewing has changed quite a lot. They're not, I think it seems like people are asking you to put yourself into a situation, and what would you do if this happened or that happened, to try to get more at where you are really coming from. If you're not prepared for that, you might be just sitting there with a dumb look on your face, right? I mean, what kind of things can people do just to even research what's important now to interviewers, to companies?
Great question. You're exactly right. So in the old days, what would happen is you'd apply on an application, you'd send that into a company. They may bring you in and they may do a drug test just to make sure you're not doing drugs or you're coherent. So it was a very, what hours do you work during the week? What's your availability? Now things have completely changed, and you're right. More and more employers are adopting this model of behavioral questions. So they do like to put you in situations. So what I tell my clients is to do is think of the STAR format. That's situation, task, action, results. And these situations, usually you can kind of guess because they're broken down into different themes, and there's typically 10 common themes. For example, one of them is your communication skills, or one of them may be how do you work well in a team. So, one of those questions, they can ask multiple questions from just those themes. So, if you think about that with how you work well with team or how you work well with others, say, give me a situation where you had to complete a project on time and you didn't meet that deadline. What did that look like and what happened? So they just want to know how you handle adversity and how you could communicate in those settings, how you work with teams. So really you can actually practice these type questions. There's these themes allow you, for example, when did you take a leadership role at your company? So there might be a topic of leadership, or name a time that you were assigned to do a task among your other peers and you kind of led that project. What was the project and how did it begin? And if you follow that star format, it's kind of a way that they love to see. So you give the situation. So what were you assigned to do? The task. What is your personal responsibility in the situation? The action means your specifics. What did you do, you, not anybody else, in that moment to create success? And your results should obviously be something positive. And if you think about that way and you answer those questions in that model, it's really a foolproof model to to answer the hiring manager's questions in a correct manner.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, like, I would be sitting there with a dumb look on my face because I have to go through, like, all my jobs and, like, "Well, is this a good example? Is that a good example?" I can definitely see how just thinking about it ahead of time, making a few notes could just make all the difference, and you're sitting there looking like a zombie, like a dumb person, or sitting there looking like you have a clue of what's going on.
Practice, practice, practice is the key.
Yeah.
Mock interviews, certainly. That's what I do a lot of times with college students, because if you think about it, when you're in college, I was the same way. I had never even thought about job interviewing. I didn't even know what they were going to ask. And part of that could have been my research, of course. I could have visited the Career Center. But a college student, you just think you're going to wing it and you're going to get by with it. But you're exactly right. A lot of these students, even professionals, have been out of the workplace 20 or 30 years and they're getting laid off by the coronavirus and they're having to go to work and they're going to have to job interview. Interviewing is just so much different. And so you're exactly right. If you can prepare the candidates to have these questions in their minds and these scenarios, these thoughts, you can really prepare somebody for a job interview.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's take like a detour away from this because I think a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs. They don't have to think too much about that. Although I know that for their children and for friends and stuff that they will definitely point them to your book, The Hot Seat, which we'll put a link to that on the podcast website, which is getyourfillpodcast.com, and as well as links to how folks can get in touch with you and stuff. But I know another piece of your expertise is helping people to kind of live life on purpose and to make sure that what they're doing, that they have a direction, they have a goal. They're not just being zombies. They're not just walking through life like, oh, I got to go to work again. And have this my cousin. I think I am okay to reveal that she works for the IRS, and she just despises her job. She absolutely hates it. And she said to me the other day, only 10 more years. I said, are you kidding me right now? Only 10 more years and then I can retire. I'm like, are you kidding me? 10 more years of misery? She is just absolutely hates it. I think that's a long time. How can we like step away from this feeling like I have this security. I need to hang on to it for 10 years till I can see the end of the tunnel and step back and say, well, how, can I love my life and love my work and still feel some kind of level of confidence that I'm going to be able to pay my bills? And
Yeah, great question. And the reason this story resonates with a lot of people is it's because it's true. You look at a Gallup poll that's very well known of 153,000 American workers. And of those workers, 70% of them admitted that they hate their jobs. So 7 out of 10 people in this world, in this country, are walking around hating, dreading Mondays and celebrating Fridays. And it really came to me during these talks about job interviewing that people didn't really know what they wanted to do with their career, or they were stuck, or they had a similar story of what you just talked about. And I think it's so sad because we all know people like this. Some of them won't change their minds, that they feel like they're going to be stuck there for another 10 years. And it's okay, and I want to say this, it's okay to not like your job right now, because I don't want your dream turning into a nightmare. So, in other words, I never advocate anybody that's making a professional income, that's providing for their family, to quit their job and pursue NBA basketball playing. That is not what we're doing here. What we're doing is I'm giving you a plan to succeed and to find your purpose and your passion. And what that simply means, I think it's been a cliche in this society, and a lot of people don't like hearing those words because they automatically think of something abstract. Well, Zach, are you saying that I should go quit my job cutting down trees and being a professional stunt maker? Absolutely not. What I'm advocating you to do when I say purpose and passion is you look at your own unique strengths, your abilities, your gifts, your talents. Everybody has them. You find those strengths and abilities, you work on them, you develop them, you take them through specific tactics to vet that out. Then you start that goal, that vision of what you want to do in your life with your career. So, in other words, I'm not asking anybody that has a stable income and they're 40 years old to just up and quit their job. But what I would say to your friend is, we were meant for so much more in this life. Life is short. We really don't have that long. A lot of times, even me, I take my life for granted, but we never know when it's our last day. So I can't imagine for me, and I've been there, that don't like my job, but I can't imagine being in a job and saying, okay, my exit plan's 20 years, my exit plan's 10 years. And so you're going to live your life. One third of your life is spent working. You're going to spend all that time hating your job. Think of what your life is going to look like in that period. So, what I really want to challenge people to do is think about A, how short life is, and then B is that they were meant for more than what they're doing, and they can do this. And there's an easy transition plan to make everybody feel better about moving towards something and not sitting in a situation that they dread.
Yeah, it's uh, um I'm thinking about her as you're talking about, that this all, is having an impact on her health. She's got back problems. She's not as fit as she should be because she's depressed, I think, and I think is it hard for people to see a way out without, you identify yourself in this role. Do you find it's hard for people to sort of suck themselves out of like, oh, this is what I do. I'm a consultant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever, and then turn around and say, but I could be, I could actually be pursuing this landscaping dream that I have or whatever. It's often it's quite a change, right? Hard for people to change their like mindset, their identity.
It is. And if you think, I'm going to open myself up and be completely honest with your audience. I was one of them. I used to be a zombie. And so when I got out of college, what I thought the main goal was is to make the most money. I thought, when I talk to students and everybody around me, is if you make the most money in life, you're going to be very happy. So I decided to pursue a career in sales. And what I wanted to do was sell in the healthcare industry. And so that at the time made the most money. So, it took me a long time to get in. At first, I really did enjoy it. The first few years, like you said, things change. In my book, I talk a lot about, that 3 years you may really love your job and then something hits you and you're like, this isn't for me anymore. And that's normal. And we go through, humans, we evolve, we change. And so what I would say to people is, I've been in that situation. And a few years later, dreading my job, hating it, and realizing this wasn't the line of work that I wanted to pursue for my future, I felt stuck at the age of 30. And so my health began to decline. I actually woke up and there was two freight trains running down the side of my ears and I couldn't hear. And I struggled in my job. I struggled with my manager. I couldn't hear my customers. I had my TV all the way on the full max volume of 100 and still couldn't make out what they were saying. So I went to the ENT, which is an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease, a severe form of it. And Meniere's disease starts off usually with dizziness. So I actually had this ever since I was young. And so I had dizzy spells when I was young, and people couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And then all of a sudden, over time, it emerged into tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. And so that ringing became worse over time, and I saw an ENT, second opinion. I had hearing aids, multiple oral therapies, steroids, procedures, went down the gamut. And finally, one doctor told me, look, you're done. You're finished. You're going to have to sign up for disability payments because, you can't hear. It's obviously a disability. So I had one more last referral to a doctor in Nashville. I'll never forget it. He came in and we went through this holistic approach more in health. And he said, are you stressed out? And I said, well, everybody's stressed out. He's like, well, I mean, is there something in your life causing a lot of stress? Because, stress and diet can actually affect Meniere's disease. And I went back home and I thought about it a little while, and I thought, well, stress is normal for everyone. That's kind of, and then we began talking more to the doctor, and he said, it's not normal as you think it is. It is, you do have stressful events, but, and then I kind of doing some self-evaluation, and I kind of thinking about it, man, I don't like my job and it's affecting my health. My blood pressure's out of control. My diet's out of control. Back then, I weighed when I got out of college. I started gaining weight. So I was all the way up to 240, 250 pounds, not working out. And so I decided, long story short, I was going to change my career because it was actually affecting my health. And I said that there was going to be a change in my life where I was going to actually do something that I love and step away from this concept and idea that it's about the money. But what I found is when you really love your job, that can turn into financial success. We automatically think when we're going to leave a job that we hate, we're not going to make any money. That's just simply not true. I've interviewed entrepreneurs, I've interviewed computer techs, I've interviewed engineers that absolutely love their job. That's one of the things I do. And most of them that love their jobs make a pretty good income.
Yeah. It's an excellent point, actually. I remember when I left a job that I hated, they told me, you're never going to make this much money again. And I thought, why not? I'm
Right.
the same person, If I have this talent for you guys, I was going to bring shine my light on somebody else. But it's true though, that so many of us, that's the goal, like I need to make a lot of money. So I was actually just talking yesterday to my landscaper, and he said, oh, my son's going to become, I think he said, an engineer. And he said, because he wants to make a lot of money. That's his goal.
Right.
Well, I think we have to have a starting point. We want to make a lot of money and love our life, love our job, love our whatever. But you actually reminded me of a situation that when I was married, I was working, at this job, and I found out that they were trying to get me fired. And I thought, well, why would they want to get me fired? And I started to tune in and listen to myself and the way I was talking to people and the way I was acting. And I was so miserable that I was just full of venom, and I was just lashing out at everyone. But it comes over you so gradually, right? It's so, you just every day you just hate your life and your job a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And you don't stop and think about what can I actually change this? If you, like when the doctor said to you, stress is not, the kind of stress you have is not normal. Then it forced you to come back and say, well, why am I feel this way?
Right.
But it's like boiling a frog, right? As they say, I don't know if that's a true expression. I never actually tried to boil a frog, but that things you just get warmer and warmer and warmer, and you don't know enough to jump out of the water. And I don't know. I mean, if I think a lot of people have that, well, what you're saying, the fear of, if I leave here, I'm not going to make this much money again. I'm going to be walking away from my security, my health plan, my whatever. But also, I mean, how did you go about, being where you were and in this job where you identified yourself as a salesperson? And how did you do that? How did you figure out, well, what you wanted to do next and how you wanted to change your?
Yeah, there's multiple things that kind of happened to me, but one of them, it's kind of an old school thing, but it's becoming more and more popular because we have smartphones. But this is one thing I recommend for students or even professionals, and it sounds cheesy, but it works. Create a career journal. And what I mean by that is you can have some questions there is what are my strengths? What are my abilities? Where do I see myself in 5 years? If money were no object, what would I want to do with my life? And you start with those basic premises and you start answering these questions. You come up with ideas and concepts and the things that resonate with you over your life. And one of the things, I was getting ready to move from Knoxville, Tennessee to Atlanta, Georgia. I had just started a new job and I was moving and I had a career journal in there that I hadn't used in years. And one of the things that said in there is I love to teach, I'm passionate about it, and someday I want to be a trainer. So I got to thinking about that and through my life, and I asked people around me what I was good at. So I asked people that I respected. I'm not talking about the drug dealer Timmy that lived across the street. What am I good at? Right. I'm talking about professionals in my life that I looked up to that were considered mentors. I even asked my boss at the time, I said, what do you think my strengths are? And he said, well, Zach, have you ever thought about being a trainer? And a trainer in the industry was pretty much somebody that teaches and does uses platform skills to get up in front of audiences. He said, I saw you present at the meeting last month, and he said you were incredible. I had a lot of great feedback from that. Have you ever thought about taking your career in a different direction and being a trainer? And then the light bulb started going off as I saw the career journal and what my boss had said and what people around me said. And I thought back to a situation. My fourth grade 4-H teacher actually told me, and I remember this, and this is crazy because this is years ago. She said, Zach, we all know you're going to be a teacher. And so all these signs in my life that I never saw because I never thought I was good at anything. And I hear that from people all the time. Well, I don't have any strengths. I don't have any things that I like to do. I don't have anything I'm good at. Oh, bull. You just haven't found it yet.
Right.
That's
Or
just
you
that.
don't know that you can get paid to do that, right?
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
when I thought of a teacher, I thought, there's no way I want to teach kids all day.
Right.
And I still don't. But people don't understand that there's 821 career paths in the United States, according to the Department of Labor and Bureau of Statistics. A teacher doesn't just mean you sitting in a high school class all day for 5 days a week and
Right.
then getting off for the summers and the winters. So what I did is I translated that teaching, that speaking abilities into a career. And that's how I begin to make the change. And so if you can think about it in that mindset, and I didn't automatically quit sales,
Yeah.
but I started to like sales a little bit more. You know why? Because I started to teach in my job. And guess what? My performance was better. And so I had always performed in sales, but I even got a little bit better because the way I looked at my new role until I really wanted to transition out of it, I was going to teach healthcare
Mhm.
professionals. And when I started to adopt that attitude and that purpose and that passion, things began to accelerate. You know, people say half the battle is showing up to work. They want employees just to show up with a smile and an attitude and a passion. And that would bring everybody's ROIs in their companies tremendous, triple.
Mhm.
And I could really see it in my own job because I began to teach and I began to enjoy doing that. So that's just some of the ways that I begin to break the mold into transitioning into something different.
Yeah. Now that's an excellent, you made two really great points. And one is, as you say, stop thinking about like, I'm a salesperson, I have to sell, sell, sell. No, educating your clients is one of the best ways to sell. I'm a real estate agent. That's all I do is teach my clients stuff. But also asking other people what you're good at. That's, you know, because as you say, like you look at yourself and you take your own skills for granted. You think everybody can do this. But when you ask someone else, well, what do you think I'm good at? They might say something that you thought, well, can't everybody do that? Well, no, they can't. And because you already have that skill, and it comes naturally to you and you love it, you don't think anyone would pay you to do that. You don't see how you can incorporate that into your own life and stuff. I know um, one fear I think that people have too, as we talk about, th- thinking, getting rich, getting to a point maybe where you have achieved a certain level of financial freedom and now you're ready to transition out of your day job. And I think people sometimes are afraid that they're going to be bored, that they're not going to have anything to do, and that they're just going to be like, what's my purpose going to be? What's going to get me out of bed in the morning? Um, I don't know. So you've got questions, right? People need to ask themselves for people who haven't ever kept a career journal or who don't really know. I don't know. I mean, when you said a career journal, I thought, well, what does that mean? I don't really know what I would put in that career journal, and I don't know how I would kind of get going. I don't know. Do you have some?
I do. So, of course, there's a great app called Day One. Day One, and you can download it on your phone. It's free. And so everybody's got a smartphone these days. That's the best way to journal, I think, nowadays. Now, some of us are like to write things down. I'm actually one of those people. I still carry a paper calendar. Can you believe it or not? That's kind of shocking because everybody uses their calendar on their phones, but I still like to keep a paper calendar because I like to look at everything. So it's whatever you're comfortable with. A lot of people like the app because it reminds them daily that they need to write something, that they need to do something. Either way, you do it. But I always tell people to start off with some questions. So if you're beginning this journey, is number one, what are you passionate about? What are your strengths? What are your talents? What are your abilities? Write that on the top of the page because these questions aren't going anywhere. Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Who have you talked to and recorded their feedback? In other words, written it down or typed it on your phone, what you're good at. Who are we going to talk to? Who are we going to network with? How are we going to network? How are we going to begin that? Is that going to be LinkedIn? Is that going to be hand to hand? Have you always wanted to start a business? What do we need to learn how to do that? How do we need to, who do we need to talk to? So one of the career journal think a lot of entrepreneurs don't think they need one, but I would argue that they do because if you're going to start to transition into your own small business or an independent business, what one of the great things I do, and as I recommend it in my new book, is talk to somebody in that industry, talk to somebody in that business. Let me give you an example. I met Bob at one of my job interviews, and he came up and he said, I want to own my own restaurant. That's been my dream my whole life. You kind of inspired me to do that based on your talk today, and I was really honored with that. And he said, what should I do? I've always wanted to own my own restaurant. I'm thinking about this. I've already even got some of the plans in mind. I'm getting ready to go out and get a loan for $250,000 and build my own restaurant. And I said, well, before I would do all that, I would talk to somebody in the business. Do you know what gross profit means? Do you know what net profit means? Do you know what your biggest expenses are in your business? What's your concept? How are you going to brand? And then it started to kind of blow his mind. He's like, well, I haven't thought about that. I'm just a really good cook. Like, well, we probably need to talk to people that are in the restaurant. Well, how do I do that? And so begin journaling, record people that you talk to. I even recommended him talk to some of the people I knew that own restaurants over the phone. So he began to do that. And I never forget, he emailed me a few months later and he said, Zach, I've decided not to open my own business. And I said, "Why is that? You seem so passionate about the restaurant industry." He goes, "I wasn't passionate about the business. I was passionate about cooking."
Yeah, exactly.
And so without doing that, he was about to spend $250,000 not knowing the
That he
business,
didn't have.
and not knowing how to do, that he didn't even want. So in 2 or 3 years, we would visit Bob and he would be miserable in his job because he said, "Zach, all I want to do is cook. That's
Right.
what I'm good at. I'm good at creating recipes." So now I've created my own little catering business where the main focus of it is me cooking. And then I let my wife do the deliveries and she helps me with the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
So that's how a career journal can help even the people that want to start their own business, even for your audience, that they can record these things down. And he used the career journal, and I'm sure what he used it for was recording notes of people that he interviewed. And so he took those notes and he's like, "Gee, like reading all these notes, the startup fees, the failure rates, the gross profits, I have to hire people." And so you start to learn more about the profession, I believe, through a career journal.
It's funny you say that because before I was in real estate, I started a exactly like this guy in the restaurant. I decided I was traveling. I had done the same thing. I wrote down, I had 3 questions like what do you do for fun? What are the jobs you've had? What are the aspects of those jobs you've most enjoyed? And then if no matter what you did, you'd make $250,000 a year, what would you do? And I looked back and my questions and my 2 big things that I like to do was traveling and shopping. So I thought, and someone said, "Oh yeah, you can be a, you can," and I said, "Oh, I'm going to travel around the world and buy things for people." And someone said, "Yeah, that's a real job, that's importing." I'm like, "Oh my God, okay, I'm going to be an importer." And I went out and I got a name for my company and I flew overseas and I bought a bunch of stuff and brought it home. If I would have just spoken to one person who did that job, because then I'm like, I have to package all this stuff up. I got to do the website. I got to do all these other things that have nothing to do with traveling and shopping. You discover that it's maybe not your ideal job.
Absolutely.
And that's something a lot that we talk to people who think that I want to be a real estate investor. What does that mean? Well, go find a real estate investor and offer to, like, this guy could have volunteered to work in a restaurant. He could have volunteered, or not volunteer, but could have got a job in that industry. And people go and find an entrepreneur who's doing what you want to do and say, "Can I follow you? Can I talk to you? Can I help you? Can I do something?" And then you start to learn what's actually involved. That's very good advice.
That's in the next coming book is about job shadowing and doing volunteer vacations. Is that I encourage everybody, and this is even in the professional world. So a long time ago, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And so when I was in the pharmaceutical market, I watched doctors. I was like, wow, I want to be a doctor. This is kind of cool. And so one of my assignments was through my company, thank God, because I didn't think about this, earlier, is that I was going to do preceptorships with doctors because they wanted to see what it was like in a life of their shoes, seeing multiple sales reps, seeing patients, dealing with staff, nurses, call-ins, pharmacies, all that. So I got to do preceptorships, and they were a phenomenal thing because I was with Dr. Simmons, never forget it, Morristown, Tennessee. We were in clinic all day, and had 32 patients on the books, family practice doctor. And I even felt stressed out in the exam rooms. And from patients talking to him, they would come in and ask him for like 12 things. Hey, my knee hurts, my toe hurts, my toe's green. Hey, my nose is kind of nasally. Oh, also, I'm kind of balding up here. And so dealing with all these patients at the end of the day, and then dealing with the pharmacies, and then also he had reps coming by. I asked him at the end of the day, never forget this. I said, "How in the world do you do this job?" And he said, "I love this job. I love taking care of my patients." I knew right then, first of all, doctors really do have a calling in life.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people look to them for, purpose and passion because they have a high calling in life. But again, after that one day of job shadowing, I said, I would never want to do this even for 2 minutes. And so you make a great point is follow somebody around, job shadow, get in their car, get in their vehicle, go to their place of work, volunteer, like Bob. If he would have done a volunteer vacation, what if he worked in a restaurant a week? He worked in there, he found somebody he knew, he volunteered his time, maybe from just learning it after 4 hours a day, every day. Hey, this ain't gonna work for me. So you're exactly right. I love that you said that and brought that up. It's a great point.
No, and you've talked about a little bit about your new book. What's the name of your new book? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the new book launches with fingers crossed this fall of 2020, and it's called "Don't Be a Zombie: Find a Career You Love." And it's all about finding something that you enjoy doing and learning more about that. It's a phased approach: phase one, phase two, phase three, very easy. Phase one talks about why you should like what you're doing and talks about purpose and your passion and what that means in life. The second phase is the money phase that I tell everybody that's the key, because it actually tells you how to do this. A lot of people talk about find your purpose and your passion, discover work you love, do something you enjoy. But how do we get there? So there's lots of steps. That's what the bulk of the book is about in that number phase two approach. And then finally, phase three. How do we take this on? Now that we've found something that we like, we've identified something, let's harvest that ability. And so phase three talks about where do we go now? What's our action plan? What is our steps? And then the book ends with 30 action items that you can do today, not tomorrow, not next week. What 30 action items that you can begin doing right in your place. And so that's really what my book's about.
Wow, that's really powerful. I'm actually going through this. You think that this is a thing. I know you work a lot with high school students, college students, people who are just starting out in their careers, but I'm going through this right now with my 59-year-old boyfriend, and he's just like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it's not easy, and it's just, as you say, there, even if you don't know that there are 821 jobs out there, that there are so many things that you don't even know exist that you might love to do, but how do you find them out? How do you go there? How do you do that? Um, are there tools for that? I know that there's like the Myers-Briggs and different kind of tests and stuff like that. Do you recommend any kind of thing to help people just sort of maybe hone in on like a field or anything that can help them, give them some direction?
It's like you've read my book already. It's amazing. So there's actually a chapter on 9 different personality profiles, skills, abilities that you can do online that are free resources, even by simply doing Google personality profiles. There's career finders, there's all different types of websites. There's apps out there on your phone where you can actually begin to answer some of these questions. And so, one of them, like you said, is Myers Briggs. Another great one is DISC. And DISC really says what your personality is. And you say, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, your personality is what kind of work environments you like. So, for example, I'm more the introverted person, believe it or not. But, I love to speak in front of people. But, I found my personality, and what this can do, it can kind of align you with jobs, what you might be good at. So it might give you a hint because it'll list like 13 careers that have this type of personality profile that fit yours. So if you're very analytical, obviously you can think of maybe accounting would be under there, or statistics, or math. So these tests online are great resources to really begin. And I would say your DISC one, your Myers Briggs two, and all these other free resources that are out there. There's so many different ones, but in the book, I really do break that down at what is the advantages to certain personality profile tests over the other. But the main step is just start with one. And you can really build that bridge there. Not many people need past 2 or 3 because a lot of them can align it and give you kind of a printout of what those careers would be good at. So, for instance, I'm good at teaching. And so, if you find teaching, there's some careers out there that show you what career paths might be good for teaching. So exactly those type of mechanisms. And nowadays, with technology being in our fingertips every day, there's really multiple platforms so that we can learn more about our skills and ourselves.
Excellent. No, that's wonderful. I'm very impressed that you have sorted through all the various tests and, give people sort of the pros and cons, because it's tough when you just searching online. Sometimes you fall into the abyss, which is the internet, and you just feel like you're not bringing anything back with you. You're not, it's a good way to waste a lot of time without necessarily feeling like you've accomplished anything.
Yeah, and if you Google it, there's certain ones that there's probably 300 out there. Basically, they're all built off the same theme. So I'm not, definitely not advocating this one against this one. But what I do try to give you is like an idea of where to begin, because it can be a little bit overwhelming when you type in Google and there's 300 items
For
for a
sure.
personality profile test.
Yeah, you feel like I
So,
don't have time to figure out what my personality
right,
is.
right.
I
And
got
then
to go to
people
work.
get discouraged and like, forget this.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope that when your book comes out, that you'll send me a link that I can add to this podcast, so that even folks, who might find it later, long after we've obviously published it, which will probably be in 2 weeks, that they'll be able to click back and find it. But and definitely to the hot seat. What other kinds of things? This is 2 questions I want to ask you right now. One is, what is your favorite part of your work now?
I love the speaking.
Yeah.
I really enjoy, of course, with COVID-19, that's kind of limited where we're more in a virtual setting.
Yeah.
But I do think, there's one time that we're going to be back to normal, and I don't know when that is, not predicting anything, but being in front of the audience, when you give a presentation and you see people engaged in that, there's no greater feeling. And then there's no greater feeling when I have these conversations at the end of the talk where somebody comes up and I've started to grind the gears in their heads. I tell a story in the book about Dennis and Doug, but Doug actually came up to me. This is when I was a new speaker. I given a message on purpose and passion and finding what you love. And um, Doug was 62 years old,
Oh, wow.
and he was retiring, and he was going on to his encore career. And he came up to me and he starts laughing at me. And he says, "Guess your advice is wrong." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "I'm 62 years old. This doesn't apply to me." And he's like, "What do you tell somebody to do to live with passion and purpose at my age? I'm getting ready to retire." I really had no answers for him at that time. New speaker, never really thought about it. And I went back and thought about it more. Colonel Sanders was considered a failure until the age of 67. He didn't start fried chicken, but he didn't franchise KFC until his late 60s. And so the point of that story is it's never too late to do an encore career. It's your attitude and how you feel, because I know plenty of people that have retired and went on to do encore careers that they actually love and enjoy doing. But I was also encouraged by that, because if Doug didn't feel anything from my talk, he would have simply left that day. But he was actually searching for more in his way. And so that's what I love to do, is start challenging some of these narratives. And then I've also had, of course, really good feedback come back. But, Doug, for me, I'll never forget that day, and people around me were like, "You really got me to think." And I had been there for the college students, and I had one person at a career college say, "I'm not sure if I want to do this career service centers much longer." And for me, I'm like, "You're teaching the kids to be okay." But anyway, that's what I love, is to change the the theme, the idea, the identity that you can actually have work that you love.
Yeah, it's true. Just like shift that paradigm, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at all this whole big world opening up to me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is an amazing feeling, right? To know that you've changed someone, and like you say, the energy and stuff like that. It's very special.
It's fun. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I really, really love that part.
So is there like, do you have a favorite book or something that a favorite podcast or something that you listen to, look at, keep coming back to again and again that you feel has impacted your life?
Yeah, I love nonfiction books, and so I do read them a lot. There was a great book that kind of helped me. It was called Start by John Acuff. It really talks a lot about careers and how you go from different transitions in life. And one thing, and it's different because books are so amazing. You can remember, you can forget a lot of things, and people say, well, I forget when I read, but actually it's in your brain still. And so one concept that he talked about is he was like, crash a plane in your life. And so I started reading it and I was like, what, this dude's crazy. So he was like talking about plane crashes, and that was his biggest fear in life, and that he had um, been following survivors because he was fascinated with planes and crashes for some reason. But he was fascinated with the people that survived plane crashes. And what his research showed and what he looked at is these people that survived plane crashes, where there was many people that had maybe perished and maybe they were the five people that got to survive. He didn't go on in life and say, okay, now I'm going to watch more Netflix TV. That's what I regret. They went on to be inspired. And so his whole message and theme was it's time for you to crash a plane in your life, not literally, but figuratively crash that plane. And so that kind of stuck with me. Another one for me, podcasting wise is um, I've always been a big Dave Ramsey fan, and while that doesn't have anything to do with, more of the financial realm, that does get into the career section part. There's a guy named Ken Coleman that's on there that does the Ken Coleman Show, and he has callers call in that me and you have talked about. These people that are in their jobs, or they're searching, or they've been laid off, and I really enjoy listening to that because I think Ken provides pretty good advice for his audience. So I think that book and really has stuck with me through the years, as well as the Dave Ramsey podcast.
I had my I keep muting myself because one thing that people don't know who aren't watching the videos, and I'm eating my breakfast in front of you. I'm very sorry about that.
I like the multitasking.
But also, I'm in the flight path here, and sometimes planes are going by while I'm trying to have my podcast. So I'm trying to keep the, engine noise down a little bit, but then sometimes I hit the wrong button. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting, right? You have those brushes with death, and all of a sudden you realize that you're not going to live forever. Actually, I talked to a guy yesterday who, at 38 years old, had a stroke, and they told him, that's it. You're all done. You're never going to be able to walk and talk properly and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have strokes. My dad had a stroke, but when he had his stroke, he was like 84 years old. It's a little different, when you're 38 and all of a sudden you're thinking, you're looking at, okay, I've got, I might have 50, 60, 70 years left to live and I can't walk.
Right.
It's you, which is going back to your point of, you don't know how much time you have. You don't know how long you're going to live. So do you really want to spend 10 more years or 10 more minutes hating your job, hating your life, just, counting the seconds until it all goes away and not even realizing the impact that it's having on you, on your body, on your mind?
Exactly. Yep.
So
Uh,
what should I have asked you, Zach, that I failed to ask?
I loved it. I enjoyed our conversation immensely.
Mm.
One thing I would say, that I think you covered all the great points. The one thing I'll say is that, for people that are excited about this concept and that are looking forward to the book, I would encourage everyone to go to zackballinger.com. It's ZackBallinger.com. And all my social media links are right there on the main page. And whatever social media venue that you follow me there. And I'm going to take you through this. I know fall seems like a long way away, but it sneaks up on people, and I'm going to be doing a lot of great giveaways during that time before the book even launches. I'm going to be doing a launch party where hopefully I'll be live and being able to do some book signings in different areas. So if you're out there in that way, you can come out. If I'm in your area speaking, that's going to be advertised as well on that platform. But really, if you're excited about this book and you want to take the next step, follow my social media links. I give a lot of content out there. My content's free. I don't charge a membership or anything like that. And I post articles all the time that may help you and encourage you along that fate until that book comes out. So that's what I would really encourage people to do, is take that next step. And I encourage everybody to follow us, and you're going to find a lot of great content.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Zach. And we're going to obviously put a link to your website and all your information on getyourfillpodcast.com as well, if you're not listening there and you want to pop in. Um, Thank you very much for being here and sharing all of this with us and helping
Thank you
people to
so
be
much for
more.
having me. I know there's a lot of talented guests that come on your show, and a lot of them are different arenas. And so it's really an honor and a privilege for you to select me to come on your show, and I appreciate it. And hopefully, if you're able to change a life, you ask me what I really enjoy doing. These stories about how people have quit a job that they've hated and they've gone into even a personal business that they love, you'd be surprised how much that kind of can impact even my life in hearing that. So thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate your time and allowing me to be a guest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if someone's listening and they have been impacted by Zach, you have to let him know that, because this is our food, right? This is our energy. This is what keeps us going.
Absolutely. Love to hear back any stories.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Zach.
Thank you.
And